Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a show that endeavors to bring you what's going on a local, regional, national, international basis. We're always looking around the globe, and I'm Robin Adair, and gazing into his globe, as he often does, is that savant from Saanich, the Saanich Croatian sensation, John Jurisic, my co-host. And John, we certainly have seen a lot of examples recently of people getting angry, very angry at their politicians.
Yeah, aren't they though? They're just not producing solutions to life's issues. A couple weeks ago in Brazil, a mob stormed the parliament buildings, claiming an election had been stolen. like that happened a couple years ago. It's like a template moving across the globe. And now in New Zealand, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced she's stepping down. Too much stress, as people are getting angry about the way she closed down the borders to keep COVID out. Other countries are relying on vaccinations, but New Zealand has locked things down, and their prime minister is now paying the price.
You have to wonder whether other prime ministers, for example, the Prime Minister of Canada is sitting up and taking notice of this, because let's face it, the federal Liberals, they played some hardball with mandates off the top. And I think people, it's fair to say, thought at the beginning it was a good idea to get vaccinated, even to have mandates about travel across borders and making sure that people could show proof of vaccination if they were crossing international borders. But now people are vaccinated. Now the majority of people in the country are vaccinated, and the new variants that are coming out are proving not to be as dangerous. So I think Canadians are very happy to put the mandates behind us. And when Justin Trudeau still says that maybe under different circumstances, we might even have to consider bringing them back, I think it goes over like a lead balloon. And I do think he is taking a bit of a political chance in doing that, John.
Absolutely, he is. I don't want mandates. Although I'm pro-vaccine and pro-vax, I don't want mandates anymore. I noticed that some of our viewers have not liked us featuring Justin debating the benefits of vaccinations and earlier closures with an anti-mandate activist. And Robin, they seem to think that we were rooting for Justin Trudeau.
Yes, that seems to have come across in some of the viewer mail we received,
Right.
John. And I do think we have shown on this show that we find plenty to fault in the actions of our prime minister on economics, on export of natural gas, for example, or many other things that we feel he's been slow off the mark on or moving in the wrong direction. We've called him out on it. And we've very clearly stated we're sick of the mandates as well. And, it's interesting that some of our viewers still think that we're talking out of both sides of our mouths. And if we take a look at that, Lillian writes, Mr. Adair shakes his head when he doesn't agree, even when he tries to say something positive like no guns and good people at the Ottawa truckers' protests. And when he's saying something negative about Trudeau, he is shaking his head up and down. He is lying. I will not listen to these guys again.
Well, I hope you come back, because we certainly have fun with this, and we have fun with our viewer mail. For example, Ron doesn't mince words. He writes, how much are they paying you? Well, I can assure you we're not being paid. This is a passion project. We love doing this. There's no sponsorship money. There is no payment money. We enjoy talking about issues. And so enough said about that. Let's talk about healthcare for a minute, Robin. Our good friend Camille Currie is being recognized by the doctors of BC.
It's fantastic news, John, and we're very pleased for Camille. At a Vancouver ceremony, she is being recognized with the Doctors of BC and Healthcare Matters as well for the work that they've done to further advancement for healthcare in British Columbia, and it's well deserved. And so here we have Camille Currie standing in front of all the prominent doctors of BC. What do you think her message is?
This is a wonderful recognition to receive. I think that, what I really hope is that I hope that everyone across BC actually hears about this. And it's not for what some might think, it's not to stroke my ego or stroke the ego of BC Healthcare Matters, but it's that I believe if everyone hears about this, award that I've received and how honored I am to receive it, that it might also help them see that it really is possible for a single person to have a huge impact and to make a difference. And from day one, that's been part of my mission and part of BC Healthcare's mission is to highlight to the people, highlight to the medical professionals, even to highlight to the government that every single person matters. Every single person has a voice and a story, and that we want to continue to encourage people to share it.
Camille and her group have worked very hard past, couple of years to make people aware of the serious doctor shortage in our community, Robin, and British Columbia. And I know that they have plans to keep up the pressure. The problem hasn't solved itself. We'll be speaking to Camille again at length on a future show. But now we turn to the economy, Robin. Interest rates are slowing inflation, but also putting pressure on business and people in general. The housing market has gone down, 25% in the past year. So where is the economy heading? Where is this all going? Rod Mahrt is a senior investment advisor at Wellington-Altus in Victoria, one of the top money managers in the country. Let's zoom him in. We're so pleased to have Rod Mahrt from Wellington-Altus back with us in the Rumble Room for early in 2023. We have the entire year to look forward to. Rod, however, let's talk about recession. Seems to be on everybody's minds. We keep hearing forecasts of a recession, but from my point of view, and perhaps you might contradict me or state otherwise, but the economic indicators suggest that there's full employment and strong corporate profits, generally speaking. So my question, in this post-COVID age, are we perhaps needing to redefine what a recession really is?
Well, I'll tell you, from all my years of university economics courses, a recession was always defined as 2 quarters of negative economic growth, and that could be minus 10% or minus 0.10%. So recessions can either be deep and ugly, or they can be mild, and sometimes you go through a recession without even noticing it. But the one thing, John, just to answer your question, that is kind of unique is you don't normally go into a recession when you have historically low unemployment. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes this potential for a recession that we're possibly going into somewhat unique. That, and the secondary factor is, when you look at that, 2 quarters of negative economic growth, if you pull back and then put it within the context of where we are right now in the economy, we have inflation. So if you factor in inflation, you could actually make the argument today that with inflation built in, we are actually in a recession. So you can see economists kind of debating these points right now. So we're close enough to being in one if you factor in the inflation side, but if you strip out inflation, it's very likely we could ease into a mild recession sometime towards the end of the first quarter or second quarter of this year.
Well, economists might debate whether we're in a recession, but I don't think there's too much debate that the market has not been very happy over this last year, Rod. And I think a lot of people are looking at what recovery might look like. They're also looking for the signs of corrections and how long this would take, or in your crystal ball, what are we looking at in this near future for the stock market, not just in Canada, but around the globe?
Yeah, it's there's been no safe haven in 2022, whether you're anywhere around the world has been hit hard. And it hasn't just been an issue with regard to equity markets, it's also been an issue with regard to bond markets. If I may, I might just share my screen with you and show you a quick chart here. But I've highlighted a couple things with circles here in color. So you can see back in 1945, we've highlighted this in blue. We had a bear market, which lasted 1 year and was down about 25%. But what's interesting, it was then followed, by the way, the gray bars are recessions. It was followed by roughly 10 years where the S&P 500 went up over 500%. quite remarkable. And then you can see countless bull markets and bear markets in between there. But if you go to fast forward to the yellow circle here, this was the global financial crisis, the 2008 to 2010, the worst market correction since the Great Depression. And you can see that lasted about 1.5 years, and the markets were off about 55%, followed by yet another 11 years where the S&P 500 went up over 500%. And what's interesting here is this tiny little needle right here, that little needle right there, that is the correction in March of 2020. So that's when the whole global economy had to deal with the pandemic shutdown, and there was, all businesses closing, people were working from home. And what is unique about that particular correction is the central banks, the Federal Reserve in the US, Bank of Canada here, unlike the global financial crisis of 2008, they reacted very, very quickly, and they lowered interest rates to almost zero. And that's monetary policy. And then at the same time, the governments themselves, like Trudeau and Trump down south, they began pumping money into the system, writing checks and giving it to the people of the country. And that's fiscal policy. When you combine those two events, monetary policy and fiscal policy, it really set the stage. It's like really lighting a fuse on a rocket ship. This little blue circle right here is our current bear market. Now, this chart was done back in May of last year. We're now in January, so we're now 1 year into this sell-off. And, you can see the market in May was down about 23%. At the worst of it, markets, depending on which one you're looking off, we're off anywhere between 27% and 33%. But what I want to just emphasize here is whether you're looking at a bear market or a bull market or all these countless recessions, you'll see they have one thing in common. Every one of them has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So this is off our Bloomberg here, and you can just see here we are in January of 2020 when the market really began its sell-off. You can just see it just continued to break down, and then here we are in June. You can see the market put in one heck of a bottom here, just a massive sell-off. And our policy throughout this thing was to, anytime there was a rally, we sold into these rallies. But in June, we saw a significant movement in the market. And I'll just emphasize this. Bear markets tend to end in one of two ways. Capitulation, where people just say, that's it, I can't take this anymore, sell me out. Or they start to drift sideways. And what happened in June is we saw the markets in July and August take off and really move to the upside here. And a lot of people felt that was the end of the bear market. Our position was this was what's called a bear market rally, and we did not participate in this. We kept our cash dry. We're currently have been about 20% cash during this whole period. And then sure enough, in September and October, you saw the markets correct down and take out the June lows and put in new lows in October and November. I would say by June of this year, you should start seeing the markets look, because they're forward-looking indicators. So I think the market will bottom out before we actually finish a recession. And I believe by sometime between June, July, August, I would certainly be anticipating that with the money that we manage, that we'll be going bottom fishing in a serious way in anticipation of moving out of this bear market and out of whatever recession we end up with, whether it's a mild one or a deep one. And there's just too many compelling buying opportunities that we see coming our way.
Yeah. Wow. That was fascinating. Thank you for that in-depth explanation of perhaps where we might be going in 2023. Let me do a little bit of a shift here. I think we'd all agree together that the foundational measure, one of the foundational measurements for economic health is the housing market, right? At least in my lifetime. In North America, housing construction continues unabated. People, in fact, they can't find enough workers to keep these houses being built. The demand is continually strong. At what point do you feel that these rising interest rates will finally stop this strong housing market? Admittedly has gone up and down, but nonetheless, the trend is strong. When will this change, if at all, Rod?
Well, actually, we've spent a bit of time on this. My partner Alex worked on this over the Christmas holidays because that is an issue. Everyone's trying to either buy a house or hold on to their house. And the example that we kind of came across, which it really comes down to this: If you're a first-time home buyer, do you want to step up to the plate and buy a house today in this environment? Or are you better off renting? So I'll give you an example. Let's just take a $900,000 townhouse, 20% down with a mortgage of say $720,000 and assume a 30-year mortgage amortization period. So for example, in July of 2020, at a rate of say 1.9%, we'd basically have about a monthly payment of say $3,000 plus $440 for property tax, and then maybe $129 for condo fees. So basically you're all in for $3,600 total, about $600 more than renting. So at that point you could say, well, gee, we're almost better off buying a home. You fast forward to today, January of this year, and you look at it, say a 2-year fixed rate, you're now up to roughly $4,300 a month in costs, plus your $440, property tax, plus your $129 for condo fees, and your cost is basically almost $5,000 a month, which is roughly $2,000 more than what you can rent. So guess what? One of two things has to happen. One is either rates go down, or real estate has to reprice to be more competitive. And, I think you could certainly make the argument at this stage that rates are not going to go down because, we're sitting at roughly 6 or 7% inflation with a target of 2. So they're going to keep rates higher. So the second part of the equation, it means real estate has to reprice to be more competitive. So I would have to say on a risk reward basis, if in my eyes, from the data that we're looking at right now, you would have to think that real estate would certainly come off, maybe 10 to 20% from current levels, just mainly because if you look at it from an equation of to rent or to buy.
Hand in hand with the shortage of skilled workers to work on all these housing projects, we also are having a lot of trouble with our supply chain issues. And this has been an ongoing problem in our economy for quite some time. A lot of it emanates from China, which we depend on for its manufacturing. A lot of Asian markets have been very slow up the mark in terms of the supply chain. And big retailers like Capital Iron in Victoria recently went out of business after decades and decades, and now they're in receivership and in having to pay off creditors. So it's a terrible situation. Do you see the supply chain issue getting dealt with this year, Rod?
Yeah, in a sense, I kind of look at the supply chain, say, certainly over the last year where, we had the COVID shutdown. And so that was one thing. And just to give you an example, if you look at, say, those big containers you see on freighters, if you look at the shipping rates from Shanghai to, say, Los Angeles, prior to the pandemic, they were like $1,600 to ship a 40-foot container. During the height of the pandemic, they were up to $12,500, and now today they're back to about $2,200 to ship. So a lot of the stuff that was supply chain issues, Robin, were COVID driven, have largely been worked through the system. But then there's the second component, and that's that China went into the zero COVID tolerance policy, where they not just shut down their economy, but basically people were shut down into their apartments and so forth. That has had an impact in terms of companies like, for example, Apple producing products. They've got the demand, but they can't produce the products because of supply chain issues, and that has a short-term impact on their earnings. Now, so that's why one of the many reasons why, say, Apple sold off lately. Well, once you resolve that, it's not like the demand for their products isn't there. So, but China has recently, as you know, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, opened up and is allowing travel. And that is going to, obviously deal with some of those business type supply chain issues, but it may also create other ripple effects on the health side as well. So that's the first side of the supply chain issue.
So, Rod, in terms, let's dig a tad bit deeper on this staff shortage problem. It's one that I'm particularly interested in and is really impacting our region. If not, as you indicated, regions right across the world. Are there some suggested policy things that the government, that business, that the communities can do to help solve this problem? Are we just going to hire or create a bunch of robots and be living in a world of artificial intelligence for the next 20 years?
So, John, our team has done a little bit of work on this over the last several months, and one of the things I think it's important to recognize is that these longer-term economic cycles have been shorter now in duration, and with each kind of shortened cycle, it creates a different kind of employment demand for employments, goods and services, and so forth. So, for example, you look at something like an Amazon, which is announcing, quite a lot of layoffs right now with regard to their sales force. And mainly also they spend a lot of money in terms of building fulfillment centers. So you will see at this stage of the mini cycle that they're in, that they built out more capacity than they need. They have more people than they need. But as we go through that cycle, it will, that will work through, and then they'll live to be stronger another day. But a different sector would be people who just cannot find the right employees right now. They're doing everything they can to attract new people. And that would be, say, people in the restaurant sector. In my firm, we are scrambling. We are hiring everywhere across the board, from technicians to planners, and we can't find enough people. So it just depends on what sector you're in and where we are within that mini cycle that we're now moving through. That really is determining whether you're in a feast and famine industry or, whether you're fully manned up.
And it's great to hear from Rod Mahrt, and hopefully he is correct that the economy is going to improve and things are going to get sunnier for us in 2023. We're crossing our fingers on that. We're also crossing our fingers on what's going on in Ukraine right now. A terrible winter war there. It goes back and forth, so many people losing their lives. And we're hoping for some sort of resolution or breakthrough in 2023. We're going to hear a lot more about that from retired Lieutenant Colonel Chris Kilford, who is a former diplomat, really an expert on a lot of these military questions, and who's been carefully following the actions in Ukraine. We'll hear what he has to say and really look forward to that. But for now, it's time to say goodbye to our many, many viewers out there.
Many is right, Robin. Just another excellent show. We have a ton of fun. We make zero money. There's how much money we make. And we have a ton of fun for all of those folks thinking otherwise. And oh boy, are there a few of them, Robin. We're coming up to close to, if not over, 800,000 views now on this little Rumble Room, which is getting increasingly more rumbly by the day. And as you know, you can follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on the various Facebook news groups that host, and of course on Instagram and Twitter. And each of those platforms provides a different kind of viewing experience and commenting experience. So that's it for me. Clearly, this summary is helping people learn about our show. I am John Jurisic. Thank you for watching and listening.
And there's nothing in the world I like doing better, John, than watching and listening to you. The only thing I like doing better, I'm Robin Adair, is rumble on.